To truly see the world, we must first learn to see through it. To grasp reality, we must embrace illusion. For it is in the realm of metaphor that the deepest truths reside, and within the symbolic lie the keys to unlocking the secrets of our being. For millennia, humanity has instinctively employed metaphorical thinking as a tool to make sense of the world, from the epic poems of Homer to the parables of Jesus. This enduring legacy reveals our innate capacity to perceive meaning beyond the literal, to find resonance between disparate concepts, and to weave narratives that illuminate the human condition. The ancient Greeks, grappling with the mysteries of existence, personified abstract concepts like justice and wisdom as gods and goddesses, imbuing them with human-like qualities. This practice was not merely a primitive attempt at storytelling. It was a sophisticated means of exploring complex philosophical ideas through relatable narratives. By embodying these concepts in divine figures, the Greeks could contemplate the nuances of justice, the challenges of wisdom, and the interplay of human virtues and vices. Such mythopoetic narratives served as a cultural mirror, reflecting societal values, exploring ethical dilemmas, and ultimately providing a framework for understanding the human experience within the grand tapestry of the cosmos. It was Carl Jung, exploring the depths of the unconscious, who recognized the power of archetypes' universal patterns of thought and behavior that shape our perceptions and experiences. Jung understood that these primordial images, inherited from our ancestors, are not merely abstract concepts, but living forces that influence our emotions, motivations, and relationships. He saw the symbolic language of the unconscious as a vital pathway to self-understanding, a means of accessing the collective wisdom of humanity and integrating the disparate aspects of the psyche. Within these depths lie the anima and animus, the shadow, and countless other figures that dynamically shape our conscious experience. Throughout history, humans have sought to understand themselves and their place in the world, using symbols and metaphors as a language to express the inexpressible. Whether through the elaborate symbolism of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, the intricate allegories of medieval art, or the profound metaphors of religious texts, humanity has consistently turned to symbolic representation as a means of conveying complex ideas and transcendent experiences. This inherent capacity for metaphorical thinking allows us to bridge the gap between the concrete and the abstract, to explore the depths of the human psyche, and to connect with something larger than ourselves. The metaphors we use shape how we understand our life's journeys, challenges, and triumphs. Yet, in our modern, hyper-rational world, we often dismiss the power of metaphorical thinking, prioritizing logic and reason over intuition and imagination. This dismissal can lead to a disconnection from our inner selves, a limited understanding of reality, and a diminished capacity for creativity and innovation. By overemphasizing the literal and neglecting the symbolic, we risk losing access to a vital source of wisdom, inspiration, and meaning. The rise of scientific materialism has, for many, eclipsed the relevance and importance of traditional wisdom and the crucial role of metaphor. Given this tension between reason and intuition, how can we reclaim the power of metaphorical thinking to enrich our lives and deepen our understanding of reality? This exploration will delve into the psychology of metaphorical thinking, revealing how symbols shape our perceptions, influence our behaviors, and ultimately create our reality, a journey that may lead you to question everything you thought you knew about the world. We'll begin by defining the key concepts, tracing the historical roots of metaphorical thinking, exploring its psychological underpinnings, and finally, uncovering practical techniques for harnessing its transformative power. By engaging with this exploration, you'll not only gain a deeper understanding of how your mind works, but also acquire practical tools to consciously create and manipulate symbols, reshape your reality, and achieve your desired outcomes. So, let's embark on this journey into the world of metaphorical thinking and discover the power of symbols to shape our reality. It's natural to feel skeptical about the power of symbols and metaphors, but by understanding the neurological basis for metaphorical thinking, we can begin to appreciate its profound influence on our lives. Metaphor is more than just a literary device. It's the very bedrock upon which our understanding of the world is built. But what exactly is a metaphor, and how does it exert such a profound influence on our thoughts, feelings, and actions? A metaphor, at its most basic, is a cognitive tool that allows us to understand one thing in terms of another, a process of mapping meaning from a familiar domain to an unfamiliar one. We might think of metaphors as the building blocks of thought, and symbols as the architectural designs that give those blocks meaning, a subtle distinction, but vital to understanding their combined power. To understand how metaphors work, consider the classic example: time is money. This seemingly simple phrase maps the abstract concept of time onto the concrete domain of money, allowing us to conceptualize time as something that can be spent, saved, wasted, or invested. This mapping is not merely linguistic. It shapes our behavior, influencing how we prioritize our time, how we feel about being on time or late, and how we measure our productivity. This is more than just a figure of speech. It's a framework that subtly dictates our actions. But does this framework truly represent reality, or does it merely shape our perception of it? The universality of metaphorical thinking is undeniable. From the ancient myths that personified natural forces to the modern marketing campaigns that equate products with happiness, metaphors permeate every aspect of human culture. Ancient myths are filled with metaphorical representations of human conditions, the hero's journey, for instance, or the fall from grace. Religious texts use metaphors to explain the relationship between God and humanity, as well as the nature of good and evil, life and death. Even in everyday language, we rely on metaphors to express our emotions, share our ideas, and make sense of our experiences. The pervasiveness of metaphor suggests that it is not merely a cultural phenomenon, but an essential cognitive tool, deeply ingrained in the way we process information and make meaning of the world. However, not all metaphors are created equal. There exists a spectrum of metaphorical complexity, ranging from simple, literal metaphors to complex, abstract ones. A literal metaphor, such as the sun is a lamp, draws a direct comparison between two concrete objects, highlighting their shared qualities. In contrast, an abstract metaphor, such as love is a battlefield, maps an abstract concept, love, onto a concrete domain, war, creating a more nuanced and evocative understanding. The abstract metaphor invites us to consider the struggles, conflicts, and sacrifices inherent in love, as well as the potential for victory and defeat. The complexity of a metaphor is directly related to the depth of meaning it can convey. Delving deeper, we encounter conceptual metaphors, which are not isolated phrases, but rather underlying cognitive structures that shape our understanding of entire domains of experience. Conceptual metaphors such as argument is war, time is money, and ideas are food influence how we think, feel, and act in relation to these domains. The argument is war metaphor, for example, frames disagreements as battles to be won, leading us to adopt aggressive communication styles and prioritize dominance over understanding. But is this really the best way to approach arguments? The very metaphor we use dictates our behavior. The influence of metaphors extends beyond mere perception. It shapes our behavior in subtle yet profound ways. Framing a disease as a battle can influence patients' attitudes toward treatment, fostering a sense of agency and determination. Yet, this metaphor can also create unrealistic expectations and lead to feelings of failure if the battle is lost. Similarly, framing climate change as a crisis can mobilize action, but can also lead to feelings of overwhelm and hopelessness. The metaphors we use can be both empowering and limiting, and it is crucial to be aware of their potential effects. Intriguingly, the neurological basis for metaphorical thinking is becoming increasingly clear. Studies have shown that when we process metaphors, our brains activate not only the language centers, but also the sensory and motor areas associated with the concrete domains being mapped. This suggests that metaphors are not merely abstract concepts, but are grounded in our embodied experiences, meaning that our physical interactions with the world shape our understanding of abstract ideas. This neurological grounding gives metaphorical thinking a power that transcends mere linguistic convention. What happens, though, when the metaphors we use obscure the very reality they intend to illuminate? The pervasiveness of metaphor is evident in every facet of language. We use spatial metaphors, e.g., up and down, to describe image, ns, e.g., feeling down, high spirits, temperature, metaphors, e.g., looking forward, dwelling in the past, to conceptualize time, and metaphorical imagery, rest complex ideas, e.g., a sea of troubles. These metaphors are so deeply ingrained in our language that we often use them without conscious awareness, highlighting their automatic and pervasive influence on our thoughts and feelings. But how often do we stop to consider the deeper implications of these linguistic habits? Literature, too, is rife with metaphor, used to create vivid imagery, convey complex themes, and evoke emotional responses in readers. Shakespeare's famous line, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players," is a powerful metaphor that invites us to contemplate the performative nature of human existence. Edgar Allan Poe masterfully used the metaphor of darkness to represent the unknown and the fear of death, tapping into primal emotions that resonate deeply with readers. Metaphors in literature are not merely decorative. They are essential tools for conveying meaning and exploring the human condition. Art and visual media also harness the power of visual metaphor to communicate ideas, express emotions, and challenge perceptions. Salvador Dali's surrealist paintings are filled with symbolic imagery that invites viewers to interpret the hidden meanings and explore the depths of the unconscious. Film directors use metaphorical themes to add layers of meaning to their stories, challenging viewers to think critically about the world around them. Consider the film, The Matrix, in which the protagonist is given the choice between the blue pill and the red pill, representing illusion and truth, respectively. However, metaphors can also obscure reality, limiting our understanding and perpetuating harmful beliefs. The metaphor of the machine can both explain and limit our understanding of the human body, reducing it to a collection of parts that can be repaired or replaced. This mechanistic view can neglect the holistic and interconnected nature of the body, as well as the importance of emotional and spiritual well-being. The unexamined use of metaphors is, according to some esoteric traditions, one of the primary tools used by unseen forces to manipulate human thought, a dangerous secret that they don't want you to know. In essence, metaphors are not just linguistic devices, but fundamental cognitive tools that shape our understanding of the world. We've seen how metaphors work by mapping one domain of experience onto another, how they range from simple to complex, and how they influence our perception and behavior. Building on this foundation, we can now consider how metaphors and symbols have been used throughout history, a journey that will take us from ancient philosophies to modern psychological theories. This exploration promises to unveil a deeper understanding of our own minds and the hidden forces that shape our reality, perhaps even unlocking your potential to reshape that reality. The next logical step is to trace the historical roots of metaphorical thinking. Archetypes, universally installed apps on the human psyche that shape how we understand and respond to the world. But what are these archetypes, and how do they wield such influence over our thoughts and actions? Psychological archetypes, as conceptualized by Carl Jung, are universal, primordial patterns of behavior and imagery residing in the collective unconscious. They are the inherited blueprints of human experience, influencing our perceptions, motivations, and the very structure of our narratives. Archetypes are not fixed images or ideas. Rather, they are dynamic potentials expressed through symbols, myths, and recurring patterns of behavior that manifest across cultures and throughout history. Jung's theory posits that these archetypes, residing deep within the collective unconscious, manifest through symbols and myths, profoundly influencing both individual and collective behavior. Consider, for instance, the archetype of the Great Mother, a symbol of nurturing, fertility, and unconditional love, or its inverse, the Terrible Mother, representing engulfment and destruction. These archetypes are not merely abstract concepts. They are potent forces that shape our relationships, our expectations, and our emotional responses. They are the bedrock of how we build meaning from symbols, and metaphor is the language by which we experience and understand those symbols. But how do these unseen forces shape our conscious lives? These archetypes, operating largely outside of conscious awareness, exert a powerful, often unrecognized, influence on our thoughts, feelings, and actions, shaping our individual destinies and collective narratives. This is forbidden knowledge in the sense that acknowledging their influence challenges the illusion of complete conscious control. What most people fail to realize is that these archetypes aren't relics of the past, but active agents in our present. They are the hidden architects of our beliefs, values, and behaviors, influencing everything from our personal relationships to our political ideologies. But if these archetypes are unconscious, how do we become aware of their influence? Archetypes find expression through symbols, acting as a crucial bridge between the unconscious and the conscious realms, allowing us to access, and to some extent, understand the hidden forces that shape our lives. Symbols, in this context, serve as the language of archetypes, providing a tangible form to these intangible forces. Consider the symbol of the serpent, which can represent both wisdom and destruction, or the symbol of the tree, which can signify growth, connection, and the cycle of life. These symbols, imbued with archetypal meaning, resonate deeply within us, triggering emotional responses and shaping our perceptions. The symbols are not mere decorations. They are keys that unlock the doors of the unconscious. But what happens when we misinterpret these symbols? The collective unconscious serves as a vast reservoir of shared human experiences, shaping our perceptions and behaviors through archetypal patterns and influencing how we perceive the world around us. It is a shared psychic space that connects all human beings, transcending cultural and geographical boundaries, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and actions through universal symbols and archetypes. It's akin to a universal Wi-Fi signal of the psyche. This shared reservoir contains the accumulated wisdom, fears, and hopes of humanity, shaping our individual and collective realities. The collective unconscious is not a static entity. It is a dynamic, ever-evolving force that shapes our world and is, in turn, shaped by it. But how does this collective unconscious influence our individual lives? Our individual and collective realities are profoundly shaped by the archetypal patterns residing within us, influencing our perceptions, motivations, and interactions with the world, often in ways we don't consciously recognize. Consider the archetype of the hero, which drives us to overcome challenges, fight for justice, and strive for self-realization, or the archetype of the shadow, which represents our repressed desires, fears, and unacceptable impulses. These archetypes influence our beliefs, values, and behaviors, both individually and collectively. What they don't want you to know is that those in power frequently manipulate these archetypes to control populations. But is it possible to consciously harness these archetypes for personal growth and transformation? To truly grasp the power of archetypal symbols, we must turn to cross-cultural evidence, where we find recurring motifs and patterns that transcend geographical boundaries and cultural differences. The hero archetype, for example, manifests differently across various cultures, yet the core elements remain consistent. A protagonist embarks on a journey, faces trials and tribulations, and ultimately triumphs over adversity. In Greek mythology, we have Hercules, the son of Zeus, who performs 12 labors to atone for his sins. In Norse mythology, we find Thor, the god of thunder, who defends Asgard from giants and monsters. Although their specific stories differ, both Hercules and Thor embody the essential qualities of the hero archetype: courage, strength, and a willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. But how can these ancient myths inform our modern lives? Consider, too, the hero archetype in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known works of literature, the story of Buddha, the enlightened one who renounced his royal life to seek spiritual enlightenment, or the story of Moses, the prophet who led the Israelites out of slavery. These figures, separated by time and culture, all embody the heroic spirit, demonstrating the universality of this archetypal pattern. This recurring pattern suggests that the hero's journey is not merely a cultural construct, but a fundamental aspect of the human experience. But what about the darker aspects of the human psyche? Exploring symbolic parallels between Jungian psychology and esoteric traditions, such as alchemy and Kabbalah, reveals shared insights into the nature of the psyche and the cosmos. Alchemy, for example, uses the symbol of the philosopher's stone as a metaphor for the process of individuation, mirroring the integration of conscious and unconscious elements to achieve wholeness. Similarly, Kabbalah employs the tree of life as a symbolic map of the human psyche and the divine realm, revealing the interconnectedness of all things. These traditions, though seemingly disparate, share a common goal: to understand the hidden depths of the human psyche and its relationship to the cosmos. But can these esoteric traditions offer practical guidance for self-discovery? Jung himself was deeply influenced by alchemy, viewing it as a symbolic representation of the individuation process. He saw the alchemist's quest to transform base metals into gold as a metaphor for the individual's journey to integrate the shadow and achieve wholeness. Jung writes, "The alchemist was, in his own eyes, the questioner of nature, but he was also well aware of the fact that nature was posing questions to him." This quote encapsulates the essence of Jung's approach to psychology, a willingness to engage with the unconscious and to learn from its symbolic language. And what better place to learn the language of the unconscious than in our dreams? Archetypal symbols frequently manifest in dreams, revealing important messages from the unconscious and providing insights into our inner world. Water, for example, often represents the unconscious, its depths mirroring the hidden depths of our psyche. Animals, on the other hand, can represent our instincts, desires, and repressed emotions. Houses often symbolize the self, with different rooms representing different aspects of our personality. Analyzing these dream symbols can provide valuable clues about our inner conflicts, our hidden potentials, and our path toward wholeness. But how can we learn to decode the symbolic language of our dreams? Jung's own Red Book stands as a testament to the power of dream analysis. In it, Jung meticulously documented his own dreams and active imaginations, engaging with the archetypal figures that emerged from his unconscious. This process, though deeply personal, offers a model for how we can engage with our own dreams and unlock their hidden meanings. Data from modern dream studies supports the recurring presence of these symbols across demographics, suggesting their universal nature. This universality reinforces the idea that dreams are not merely random firings of neurons, but meaningful communications from the unconscious. But what happens when we ignore the messages of our dreams? In essence, archetypes are universal patterns, symbols are their language, and the collective unconscious is the shared space where these patterns reside, profoundly influencing our thoughts and behaviors. Understanding these psychological roots enhances our comprehension of metaphor and its role in shaping our understanding of the world. What we've explored so far is the bedrock upon which our symbolic world is built, a foundation that allows us to delve deeper into the intricate workings of the human mind. This understanding will help to see the truth of the quote from Carl Jung: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Now, we're just scratching the surface of how symbols influence our core beliefs and behaviors, because symbols don't operate in isolation. but rather form interconnected networks of meaning that shape our perceptions and actions, hinting at the power of symbolic complexes. By grasping these concepts, you'll gain practical tools for personal growth, self-discovery, and empowerment, ultimately transforming your life. But how do we begin to identify and deconstruct these symbolic complexes that influence our core beliefs and behaviors? Are you truly in control of your thoughts, or are you merely acting out a script written by your symbolic complexes? The concept of symbolic complexes refers to interconnected networks of symbols, beliefs, and emotions that shape our perception of reality and drive our behavior, influencing our choices and experiences. These complexes act as unconscious filters, selectively coloring our experiences and reinforcing pre-existing biases, often without our conscious awareness. This is forbidden knowledge in the sense that acknowledging their influence challenges the illusion of complete conscious control. Think of symbolic complexes as mental ecosystems where different symbols interact and influence each other, creating a self-sustaining system of beliefs, subtly dictating our thoughts, feelings, and actions. But what they don't want you to know is that the seemingly objective reality is, in fact, a subjective construction shaped by our unique configuration of symbolic complexes. Consider the concept of Maya in Hinduism, which posits that our minds construct reality through illusion, not entirely unlike how our minds construct reality through symbols. But is there a deeper truth hidden behind this symbolic veil? Symbolic complexes are not static entities, they are intricate systems of meaning formed through a confluence of personal experiences, cultural narratives, and archetypal patterns. Early childhood experiences and formative relationships play a crucial role in their development. A child who grows up in a household where success is equated with wealth, for example, may develop a symbolic complex where money becomes associated with self-worth and validation. But how do these early experiences solidify into entrenched beliefs? Emotions play a crucial role in reinforcing and maintaining symbolic complexes. Strong emotions, such as fear, desire, and anger, act as glue, binding the components of a symbolic complex together and making it resistant to change. An individual who experiences trauma, for example, may develop a symbolic complex where certain places, people, or situations become associated with danger and anxiety, leading to avoidance behaviors. But is it possible to dissolve this emotional glue and break free from these limiting complexes? Symbolic complexes exert a profound influence on our cognitive processes, leading to confirmation bias, selective attention, and distorted interpretations of reality, perpetuating self-fulfilling prophecies. An individual with a symbolic complex centered around victimhood, for instance, may selectively attend to negative events and interpret ambiguous situations as evidence of their powerlessness. Furthermore, neurological structures reflect these mental frameworks and habits. Studies have shown that individuals with deeply ingrained beliefs exhibit heightened activity in specific brain regions when confronted with information that challenges those beliefs. But how do these cognitive biases shape our everyday experiences? Consider a symbolic complex around romantic love, which may lead an individual to idealize their partner, overlook red flags, and prioritize the relationship above their own needs. Or consider a symbolic complex around success, which may drive an individual to relentlessly pursue achievement at the expense of their well-being and relationships. These examples illustrate how symbolic complexes can shape our choices and experiences, often in ways that are detrimental to our overall happiness and fulfillment. But what about the collective impact of these complexes? Shared symbolic complexes can exert a powerful influence on social and political movements, shaping collective identities and driving historical events. Nationalism, for example, operates as a symbolic complex that fosters a sense of shared identity, loyalty, and purpose among members of a nation, yet can also lead to xenophobia, aggression, and conflict with other nations. analyzing the symbolic complex of nationalism and its role in shaping political ideologies, international relations, and historical conflicts, we can begin to see how these unconscious patterns can drive collective behavior on a grand scale. Data shows that in times of social unrest, nationalist sentiments tend to surge, suggesting a heightened reliance on this symbolic complex for security and identity. But is it possible to harness the power of shared symbolic complexes for positive change? Symbolic complexes also manifest in our dreams and fantasies, revealing the underlying structure and content of our unconscious minds. Recurrent dreams of being chased or trapped, for example, may indicate a symbolic complex related to fear of failure or lack of control. Similarly, recurring fantasies of power and success may reflect a symbolic complex related to a desire for recognition and validation. Data suggests that individuals with high levels of anxiety are more likely to experience recurring nightmares, indicating a link between emotional distress and dream symbolism. But how can we learn to interpret these symbolic messages from our unconscious? In essence, symbolic complexes are interconnected networks of symbols, beliefs, and emotions that shape our perceptions, behaviors, and realities, operating largely outside of conscious awareness. These complexes are not inherently good or bad, but rather powerful forces that can either limit or empower us, depending on our awareness and understanding. Now that we understand what symbolic complexes are and how they work, we can begin to explore techniques for identifying and deconstructing them. Think of this as debugging our mental software by identifying and correcting the flawed code of our symbolic complexes. But we're just scratching the surface of understanding the power of our internal programming. By consciously manipulating symbols, we can rewrite the script of our lives, breaking free from the limitations of our unconscious programming. What we'll discover next are advanced techniques for consciously creating and manipulating personal symbols to reshape reality and achieve desired outcomes, including visualization, active imagination, and symbolic rituals, techniques that will empower viewers to transform their lives. So, how can we begin to identify and deconstruct these symbolic complexes that are running our lives behind the scenes? One of the primary challenges in working with symbolic complexes lies in their very nature. They operate largely outside of our conscious awareness. It's like trying to examine the lenses through which you see the world while simultaneously looking through them. Their influence is so pervasive that it becomes difficult to recognize them as separate entities. How, then, can we begin to unmask these unseen forces that shape our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors? The initial step is to bring these hidden structures into the light of conscious awareness, illuminating the patterns that govern our internal world. A powerful tool for achieving this is the practice of introspection, specifically through journaling. Journaling provides a structured space for self-reflection, allowing us to meticulously examine our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, searching for recurring patterns and underlying themes. Ask yourself prompting questions such as, what are my knee-jerk reactions to certain situations? What beliefs do I hold that seem unquestionable? And what makes me consistently angry, sad, or anxious? By diligently documenting our internal experiences, we can begin to identify the subtle yet pervasive influence of our symbolic complexes, tracing their roots and understanding their impact on our lives. It is in the meticulous analysis of these patterns that the hidden architecture of our inner world begins to reveal itself. But what specifically should we be looking for? One crucial pattern to observe is the connection between emotional responses and potential underlying symbolic complexes. Intense emotional reactions often signal the activation of a complex, acting as a kind of emotional alarm bell that alerts us to the presence of hidden beliefs and unresolved conflicts. For example, a disproportionate anger response to criticism could indicate a symbolic complex related to self-worth or perfectionism, revealing a deep-seated fear of inadequacy or a need for external validation. By paying close attention to our emotional reactions, we can begin to decipher the symbolic language of our unconscious and gain valuable insights into the hidden dynamics that drive our behavior. Furthermore, recognizing the emotional triggers can help us anticipate and manage our reactions more effectively. But emotional responses are only one piece of the puzzle. Another invaluable technique for deciphering the code of our unconscious is dream analysis. Dreams, as Jung famously stated, are the royal road to the unconscious, providing a direct window into the symbolic landscape of our inner world. By analyzing recurring dream themes, symbols, and narratives, we can uncover hidden beliefs, emotional patterns, and unresolved conflicts that may be fueling our symbolic complexes. For instance, recurring dreams of being chased may symbolize a fear of confronting our shadow self, while dreams of flying may represent a desire for freedom and transcendence. By carefully interpreting the symbolic language of our dreams, we can gain a deeper understanding of the unconscious forces that shape our waking lives. But dreams are not always straightforward. Expanding on this, we can utilize the technique of active imagination, a method developed by Carl Jung as a way to actively engage in a dialogue with the unconscious. Active imagination involves entering a waking state of focused attention and engaging with dream figures or symbols through guided imagery and symbolic interaction. For example, one might engage with a recurring dream figure, asking it questions, exploring its motivations, and attempting to understand its symbolic meaning. This active engagement with the unconscious can lead to profound insights and transformative experiences, allowing us to integrate previously unconscious aspects of our personality into conscious awareness. Through this process, the once hidden symbolic figures become allies in our journey toward wholeness. But what do we do once we understand these symbolic figures? Once we have identified and understood the symbolic complexes that shape our reality, we can begin the process of symbolic reframing, consciously choosing to reinterpret and redefine the symbols that influence our thoughts and behaviors. This involves challenging limiting beliefs, questioning assumptions, and consciously creating new associations and meanings for the symbols that govern our lives. For example, we might challenge the association of money with self-worth by reframing it as a tool for freedom and creativity, or we might redefine failure as an opportunity for learning and growth. By consciously reshaping our symbolic landscapes, we can alter their influence on our thoughts and behaviors, paving the way for personal transformation. But it's important to remember, deconstructing a symbolic complex requires time, patience, and above all, self-compassion. These complexes are often deeply ingrained, formed over years of experience, and reinforced by powerful emotions. It is important to approach this process with kindness and understanding, recognizing that setbacks and challenges are inevitable. Remember, this is not about eradicating these complexes entirely, but rather about bringing them into conscious awareness and transforming them into sources of empowerment. Now, let's consider some examples of symbolic reframing in action. Consider the case of an individual who identified and deconstructed a symbolic complex related to fear of failure. Through introspection and journaling, this individual uncovered a deep-seated belief that their worth was contingent upon their achievements, tracing this belief back to early childhood experiences where praise was only given for successes. They analyzed dreams of being unprepared for a test, interpreting these dreams as symbolic representations of their anxiety and fear of judgment. Through symbolic reframing, they consciously chose to redefine failure as an opportunity for learning and growth, challenging the limiting belief that their worth was dependent on their achievements. This reframing allowed them to take risks, embrace challenges, and ultimately achieve their goals without being paralyzed by fear. But this isn't just an individual problem, it is also a cultural one. We can see examples of cultural reframing at work when examining how collective symbolic complexes related to gender roles have been challenged and redefined through social movements and cultural shifts. The evolution of women's roles in society, from homemakers to leaders, serves as a powerful example of conscious efforts to challenge limiting gender stereotypes and create new symbolic representations of female identity. Through activism, education, and creative expression, individuals and groups have worked to dismantle the patriarchal symbolic complex that has historically marginalized women, paving the way for a more equitable and inclusive society. But how do these shifts translate into individual success? Many successful figures have overcome limiting beliefs and achieved their goals by consciously reshaping their symbolic landscapes. Oprah Winfrey, for example, overcame a childhood marked by poverty and abuse to become a media mogul by consciously choosing to focus on her strengths and potential, reframing her past experiences as sources of resilience and inspiration. Her story exemplifies the power of symbolic reframing to transform adversity into opportunity, demonstrating that even the most challenging circumstances can be overcome through conscious intention and a commitment to personal growth. Furthermore, data supports the ability of symbolic reframing to rewrite the effects of trauma, as studies have shown that individuals who engage in cognitive reappraisal techniques experience reduced levels of anxiety and depression. In summary, identifying and deconstructing symbolic complexes is of paramount importance because of their profound impact on our perceptions, behaviors, and, ultimately, our realities. This process is not about eliminating these complexes, but rather about bringing them into conscious awareness and transforming them from hidden constraints into sources of empowerment. Think of it as becoming the architect of your own mental landscape, consciously designing the symbols and structures that support your desired outcomes. But now that we have explored practical techniques for identifying and deconstructing symbolic complexes, we can move on to explore how to consciously create new symbols and rituals to reshape our reality. This next step involves becoming active participants in the creation of our own reality. Now that we've learned to dismantle, how can we build? What advanced techniques are there for creating new symbols to reshape our reality? What we'll discover next is even more transformative, the conscious creation of our own symbolic systems. In conclusion, after exploring the depths of metaphorical thinking, we've uncovered the profound influence of symbols on our perception of reality, our behaviors, and ultimately, our lives. The pace of modern life often obscures the subtle, yet powerful ways in which these symbols shape our experiences, leading us to navigate a world of unconsciously constructed realities. Let us now reflect on how these hidden architectures impact our journey. Our journey has illuminated the intricate interplay between consciousness, the unconscious, and the symbolic realm, revealing the transformative potential inherent in consciously shaping our symbolic landscapes. We have investigated the nature of metaphor and symbols, their pervasive influence on our perception and behavior, the archetypal forces residing in the collective unconscious, the intricate structure and function of symbolic complexes, and various techniques for their deconstruction and reframing. The power of these hidden forces that shape our experience of reality is immense, but our understanding of them is a first step. We began by asking how we can reclaim the power of metaphorical thinking. Now, after delving into archetypes, symbolic complexes, and techniques for deconstruction, we see that the answer lies in conscious engagement with the symbolic realm. The recognition of these forces and the agency we can exert over them allows for a greater fulfillment of the authentic self. How often do we stop to consider that reality is but a symbol for something more? Initially, the idea of symbols shaping our reality may have seemed abstract or even far-fetched. But through our exploration, we now appreciate its profound implications for personal growth, self-discovery, and the conscious creation of our own lives. By now recognizing the patterns that shape our emotional responses and rewriting the effects of trauma via the symbolic reframing process, we can begin to assert agency. But where does that leave us? It is by embracing the illusionary nature of our symbolic constructs that we can gain true mastery over our reality. By coming to terms with the ways in which the mind actively constructs reality, we can better see the inherent freedom to deconstruct and rebuild these often hidden architecture. It is in this way that we can realize agency. But why should we do this at all? Ultimately, the quest to understand and shape our symbolic world is a reflection of the timeless human desire for meaning, purpose, and the ability to create a life that is aligned with our deepest values. Throughout history, our species has sought to understand the architecture of their own minds, which leads to personal success and a healthier society. It is up to us to embrace this opportunity. Will you? Our minds are gardens, and our symbols are the seeds we plant. By consciously cultivating our symbolic landscapes, we can create a reality that is vibrant, meaningful, and aligned with our highest aspirations. We are each responsible for the realities that we build. Will you be a conscious architect? This exploration invites you to embark on your own journey of symbolic self-discovery, to delve into the depths of your own unconscious, and to consciously create a life that is rich with meaning and purpose. The realities we build and inhabit should reflect our own values and authentic desires. Each person should have the right to be the architect of their own reality. Will you answer the call? By embracing the power of metaphorical thinking, we can unlock new potentials, reshape our relationships, and create a world that is more compassionate, creative, and fulfilling for all. By building a world with intention, the potential for greatness is unlocked. As a next step, begin journaling each day, focusing on patterns that you see in your life and your emotional responses. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the psychology of metaphorical thinking.